Swedenborg have any dialogue with Jesus?
Did the angels help us find and connect with our soulmate?
Does Swedenborg mention suicide?
Will we be able to see God when we pass away?
God is omniscient, and why would
How
he
can
allow
someone gain heavenly reward?
Is the afterlife more likely?
God
When is our soul
Why can storms
Does Swedenborg tell us anything about our spiritual
Is there any particular
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Swedenborgian Life. Today is the panel question and answer show. This is our audience appreciation show. What's on your mind? We want to talk about it. I'm the host. My name is Curtis Childs, and I'm here with you to facilitate conversation and see what I can do about getting some words out there. And I have with me, as always, an exciting panel of experts here. So
Am I like it?
We have a panel of expert, actually.
Expert singular. Okay.
Here tonight. And listen, guys. I know you showed up looking for a good panel. There's circumstances well outside of our control that led to this. Our regulars, Chelsea and Caro, are both out of town. Their replacements were out of town. So in the end, we thought, okay, Jonathan and I are just going to have to pull our weight here. We're really going to have to buckle down and step up and try to do some mediocre answering of questions, right?
That's right.
So that's what we're going to do, and we appreciate you hanging with us if you're still here. So Jonathan, thank you for coming, and I always appreciate getting to hear your insights, your passion for it. So I'm interested as well to hear what you have to say tonight, and I'm also interested to hear the questions, because people are wondering about the most fascinating thing. It's an education for me in a way to hear,
it's true.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. Oh yeah, what is the answer? So I'm going to learn as well tonight, and that's going to be fun. All right, I've hyped it up enough. Let's hope it delivers. Here's the first question. This is from Last Chance. Does God stop evil, or does he let it happen and let good come out of it? And before we answer that, I don't feel like I ever said, if you're watching live right now, get your questions in, because type them in the chat there, and we put them on screen as you guys go. So anyway, can you answer this one? Does God still, is God stopping? This is like theodicy. This is the biggest question. Does God, because evil and God, how do you reconcile those two? Does God stop evil? Does he see it coming down the pike and he's like, no, That's not happening? Or does he say, well, I know that's going to happen. I'm not going to stop it, but I'm going to spin it so it turns good in the end. What's Swedenborg's answer?
Yeah, I believe that his answer would be both. God, and then you've got to explain why does he do one time and the other another time. But God stops a tremendous amount of evil.
Okay.
I mean, people know, if you're raising a small child, they get in less trouble than they should just by
a good metaphor.
Random molecular movement.
Okay. You stop so much. There are so many times when these cute little people want to unwittingly throw themselves off things or pick things up that they and you stop it so many times from happening.
Yeah, that's right.
Touché.
That's right. So there's a lot that he stops, but also to continue the parenting metaphor.
Which is not just a metaphor, but a correspondence.
That's true.
Swedenborg says that
That's
this is a actual physical manifestation echoing the reality of how God relates to us.
That's right. And so if you have a child, I mean, you can't just sort of strap them in a high chair for 16 hours a day or something like that. They need to have autonomy. They need to be able to do things. So you need to give them something else exciting to look at if you want to steer them away from this. It's within the free will of the child kind of thing. And so there's a passage in New Jerusalem where Swedenborg gets into this, where he says that just because of his goal, the way that God's goals work, there are certain things that he cannot prevent and still achieve those goals.
Yep.
A certain amount just will have to get past that, but he gets rid of so much. I couldn't put a percentage on it, but I imagine it's like 99% of the stuff that could happen doesn't happen, but there's a 1% that still gets through, and then he does only allow that when he can bring good out of it.
That's right. And I think that the criteria, as I see it with Swedenborg, is sort of in that question there, that he lets evil happen when in the end it will be better that it has happened. That good. That's the only way that it makes sense, is if the only things that are allowed to happen to get through the door and become part of reality, it's got to be that even if it causes pain in the short term, in the end, actually, eternal life is better off for it. That somehow whatever's happening to you in your life, all this heartbreaking, frustrating, confusing, boring, annoying, all the above that happened to us, it's only allowed to happen because somehow in the end you can look back and if you understood the consequences of how that shaped you as a person spiritually, that actually no, I would, sitting from my position here, whatever, down the line in eternal life. I'm glad that this happened.
And I was just reading in Apocalypse Explained a passage that was really kind of blowing my mind, that was talking about, it used the word complicated. It was talking about God is doing things that are so much more complicated than we can imagine. Yeah. We sort of think, oh, well, why didn't you just stop this, or why didn't you do that? That was painful to me, or whatever. And
I think that so much. When I bump my head on something, I do like it's tough having these, because I'm like, okay, there's no providence, like that does
nothing
not,
good is going to come out
that
of
you could have pulled that, man. Like hey man, I'm out here doing these shows trying to hype you up for everyone, and then you're going to do that to me? How would you do that to me?
It gave me the sense of like, three-dimensional chess is like tic-tac-toe compared to what God is doing.
Man.
He's working a long, he's thinking about stuff 100,000 years from now.
Yep.
What's going, so he's playing a very complex game out of an unbelievable degree of love that we cannot see most of the time. Yeah. And there are reasons why we can't see it.
That's well said. And I want to finish by saying that it's not like, what makes it more frustrating is imagining that God is hovering over your life, and everything that's not a person related, like if I do, like I'm trying to explain something, but I knock over this tea and it burns me, that's just God pulling a lever. But actually, Swedenborg talked about seeing evil, like that was the sphere of hell that caused even accidents. Yeah. That it's not just like it's God, like, okay, do this, that they're just like, I understand, okay, a person does something evil to me, I get, okay, that they had free will. It's this multi-layered thing too. It's not just like right behind the screen, God is there causing things. Right. There's all, for some reason, picturing it like that diffuses my frustration, because understanding, all right, it's an imperfect world. We're going to get around this. I don't know if that makes sense, but to me that changes the feel of it. Yeah. All right. So that's obviously great question. And there's much more that can be said. And hopefully we've given you guys a kernel of an idea that you can take out into your own mind, into your own life. All right. Let's take a look at the next question. This is Angie, wondering how one becomes a Swedenborgian. And you could take that question in a couple of ways.
Yes, you could.
One is, how do you become a Sweden? And you can choose which of these you want to answer, or all of them. I would say, how do you become a Swedenborgian? Meaning, how do you join a Swedenborgian organization? Like, do you get baptized in a church? How do you do that? What's the mysterious way? And then, second is, how do you become one? Meaning, like, what practice? Like, if I want to be a Buddhist. Just from my general sense through like Western culture of what it means to be a Buddhist, it wouldn't be as much like, oh yeah, I went to some ceremony. Like I would have to show I'm meditating, and I think that would sort of be how you become a Buddhist. Is that how do you become a Swedenborgian? Like what kind of practice do you have to do? Those are the two ways I see. Yeah. So do you have any thoughts on either of those, or one I didn't think of?
That's interesting. That in terms of the organizations, there's a few different organizations that you can join and so on.
Yes.
And my sense is that it's not difficult to get into any of those. Everybody's sort of welcoming members would be happy to see you, kind of thing.
So I know of 4 in North America. There's the General Church of the New Jerusalem, which is newchurch.org.
That's
There's the Swedenborgian Church of North America,
which is swedenborg.org.
Similar to swedenborg.com, but this is
yes, right.
Then there is the Lord's New Church.
Which is over here, Salma.
Yeah, what's the website for that?
I'm not sure, but you can find it. They certainly have one.
Google the Lord's New Church.
Yeah, right.
And then there's the Church of Truth in Louisville, which is not, just has one location, but I think it's True Church of Truth, their Facebook page. Anyway, those are, and then there's the conference, General Conference in England,
which is very widespread. Yes,
Oh,
right
is it
in
Europe?
Australia, and
Okay.
yeah, that's
Yep.
right. And it's a number of different, and the General Church and the Lord's New Church are both in multiple countries and so on. So, a search on the web, if you search for Swedenborgian, like Swedenborgian, and then church or something, that should get you some hits.
Right. So there's
now,
the organization, and none
so-
of them are going to turn you away. Like if you
No,
show up, they'll
that's
say,
right.
well, that's cool.
That's great. And in terms of, I think it's almost like the 12-step programs where like you define whether you're in or not, like in terms of the spiritual version of what it is to be a Swedenborgian. I think that's something that's in terms of your heart. A thought that I've been entertaining a lot just lately is the fact I've met people who were Swedenborgian Mormons. Okay. I met a man, a Methodist pastor, who he said he had this older woman in his congregation, and he said she was a good Methodist all her life, but her soul was Swedenborg. She had Swedenborg on the nightstand, And so it's actually possible to be a Swedenborgian Catholic, to be or whatever. In other words, people just like they resonate with that message, and then their worship community is, whatever denomination. You see what I mean?
And it's complicated by the fact that Swedenborg didn't start a church or an organization, so he didn't lay out, this is exactly how you do it. He talked about the new church, right? Which is this coming of this, but he and I know you've done some research and presentation on this, but there's sort of this broader definition of it, and that he lays out some beliefs of it, and it has to do with love of God, love of the neighbor.
That's right.
But he also talks about go ahead.
Well, practices like repentance, or he talks a lot about worship, but he seldom says like what that looks like.
Exactly. He doesn't say
he says the different communities of heaven worship in different ways and all that kind of, So it's really quite wide open in that way. I think it's cool in a way that he didn't get on a stump and start, out in the park and start something,
But it makes it harder to answer questions like this.
Yes.
So you got to weigh the pros and cons, right?
Yeah,
but also he talks about a church he calls the ancient church.
Yeah.
Which he says happened long ago in human history. And he calls it one church, but said they had all kinds of different doctrine and religious practices, but they were one church because of their love. That they knew being kind was what was important. So is that it?
That was the key thing in their religion.
Yeah,
that's right.
So, but what is it? I'll tell you what it means to me.
Oh, okay. All right. We're going
I just thought of this as we were saying this.
Okay.
I think it is when I take principles that I find in Swedenborg and have them change my behavior. Like I act in a certain way, and it can be in the way that I act towards my own thoughts and feelings. It can be if I'm having that dictate the way I approach something or the way I do something. To me, that's a Swedenborgian thing. And for the record, Swedenborg does not like that term, Swedenborgian.
That's true. He didn't like that. That's true.
There was a letter when people were attacking him, calling it Swedenborgianism, and he's like, "It's not Swedenborgianism. It's true Christianity." But you can't be called the true Christians, So what are you going to be called, right? Because there's all kinds of connotations there. So he wouldn't like that term, but meaning the essence of it, I feel like when I look at the principles and the principles change in action, then I feel like okay, and I don't always feel like whatever it is, a Swedenborgian, because I sometimes feel like I think the way I am would look different if I was really living this stuff. Like I imagine, a cult. If things keep going well with it, maybe in a couple hundred years, people will really know how to nail this. Like they always have ways of engaging the common good and this kind of usefulness. But I actually, man, I'm just going on and on. I think
good stuff.
Yeah, well, I'll run out of time here. We should have one of those like chess things where you click it and then like you run out of time. I have to cede the rest of it to you. But I can feel very Swedenborgian when I'm doing chores, housework, because I feel like usefulness. I'm doing and I'm thinking relatively heavenly sort of thoughts, and sometimes that's when I get the most spiritually high. Like this, like something is happening. I feel full of energy, and that seems like simplistic, but I think it's all about the mindset I have in doing it. It's the action along with the wisdom.
I'm in the same boat. Like I can't weed a garden or anything. I'm just flooded with thoughts about about repentance, about nature of, you want some plants in there, other plants you don't want, the different strategies the plants have. I'm just flooded with thoughts about those things. I've thought a lot about the what I would call the Church of One, because there's a lot of people. There's people in my own family. There's friends that I know and stuff who believe this, but they're just like physically isolated. They're nowhere near other people. And I know some people who watch the show who feel like, well, there's nobody around me who's like into this stuff. You know what I mean?
Considering how many people worldwide are into it, your chances of being near one
are pretty low.
Right.
And but it's growing every day as a result of this show.
It's getting huge.
But
as a result
and
of
other
show.
good things. That's right. And so how is it that how do you be a Church of One? Like, what is your practice as a Church of One? If you're the person, I think there's still ways, a sort of a prayer and a reading and the kind of deploying these things in your life. That's your practice,
and I
that works. So I think it's kind of a cool idea that it's great to have other people around, but you can do this alone, and connect to people as you're able to.
Well, and what I was so rudely cutting you off about was I want to see those churches of one. Like, I want people like you guys out there to teach me, like, what does it look like to live this stuff?
Yeah.
Because I think even we had people sending in fan videos for a little while, which because of logistics that kind of got sidetracked. But still, like, I like seeing how do you metabolize this and live it. You can teach me, because I think we're still just in the infancy of understanding how do you live and breathe it.
I think so too. Yeah.
I want to see everybody do this Church of One, and maybe I'm going to pick up your stuff, and live, and that works for me. I want to live. I want to live like that. I want to do that routine or that ritual or whatever it is.
Sometimes when I'm reading one sentence, is a bit of a tangent, but sometimes when I'm reading just one sentence in Swedenborg's works, I think, man, you could get a whole psychological discipline out of that. You know what I mean? You could have a massive thing. Yeah. That would be a big thing. Everybody, that thing. And it just came out of one sentence. And there's so much that hasn't been deployed. It's not that we aren't, it's not that we're being totally lazy about how to practice it or something, but there's so much richness in there.
It's painful to think of, like, wow, so much. That's why I continue to try to push this, is I feel like there's so much that could be done by people who know how to do that. I don't know how to do something with that, but some people could really take. So if you're watching, please take the stuff, own it, make it your own, and work it. And okay, that's all the time we have for tonight.
Good question.
But we're moving very slowly, but that's because we got some great questions. Let's take a look at the next one. This is from John. According to Swedenborg, when was Jesus cognizant that he was God? Was he aware his entire life, as in his childhood, or did he have to realize it? And I feel like this is a great time for me to cede some time to you, because not only did you translate true Christianity, but you know the Jesus thing inside and out. So what do you got?
That's a great question. According to Swedenborg, Jesus was not born with that awareness. That was in himself, but he figured it out over time. And Swedenborg talks in his work, Secrets of Heaven, about where it's like hidden in Scripture, how that first sort of awakening sort of dawned on him, like, ooh, wow, and it gradually came into his consciousness. He talks a lot about the mechanism of that was that I think Jesus as a boy was studying the Scriptures, and he was seeing things in the Scriptures, he was understanding them at a deep level, and as he sort of built those vessels in his mind, like got that knowledge loaded in, it's almost like creating one of these giant arrays of mirrors to be able to pick up faint signals from out in space. The divinity is not a faint signal, but you know what I mean. He was building his array in his mind to be able to catch that, and so I think that awareness did come to him in his childhood, but it wasn't like when he was one or something, Right. I think it was a little later on in his awareness, and it came to him in a while, over a period of time. There's also sort of a poignant, sort of sad thing, as the Swedenborg talks about moments where the young Jesus kind of realized what was going on with the human race, like the true horror of the situation, and he sort of wanted to stop thinking those things, like, oh, I wish I hadn't seen that,
because he's going to feel the weight of that in a way that none of us do, because he's understanding, like, I'm like responsible, like am in charge of this whole thing, and
And
also
because I can see it, I'm the one called to fix it here.
right, that I'm gonna have to fix it, and that's gonna be intense, and also this like intense love for everybody. We feel that for the people close to us, but to feel that for everybody.
That must have been amazing to come into that. And so I'm quite sure it was a progression, over time, deeper and deeper awareness, even to the end of his life in this world. I think there's more like, it's, keep seeing it in new ways, deeper and deeper ways.
And I think that just to back up a little bit, Swedenborg is saying that Jesus Christ is God doing the human thing.
Yes, that's right.
Right, and so God, it's God having this experience, like sort of living something close to what we live. But Swedenborg says we all do this on our own little scale. Not that. So Jesus, I was thinking like, what, that'd be an intense feeling to be alive and then sort of reading stuff and figuring out, oh, I'm God. Like what does that feel like?
Yeah.
And I think you would get some people saying we all do that and that we all realize that we are God. Except for Swedenborg has a different twist on it.
Yes, he does.
That he doesn't say we're God. Like I go from bumping my head on stuff and getting mad about it to like, oh, actually I'm God. But we realize that our life is from God.
Yes.
That we are. That there's. And does that make sense as a distinction? But that God is so intimately present in us that everything we have is God's in us. And this is a confusing concept that Swedenborg. So, and we don't need to go into it right now. But just that we mimic the journey of Jesus, but it's just it's in a finite way as opposed to he lived it in he sort of did the mold and now we're like these copies. It doesn't sound very lifelike.
It's not a great I'm not commenting on yours about what I'm about to say.
Just say it. All right. It wasn't good.
The analogy of a radio and music is pretty good, I think, where, depends where you have the radio tuned. The radio never becomes the music.
That's right.
A radio is not music. It's a vessel created to receive music, to be able to pick up those frequencies and all that. And so every human being is a vessel, to be able to tune in life and different kinds of life. And only we're a vessel that can sort of change our frequency. We can change the spectrum. But what Jesus had was something different, where he really was that Almighty God inside himself. He was just born into the flesh. Part of what I love about that is that you could easily think that being human is some kind of aberration. It's this bizarre thing.
Only human.
Where you're born so ignorant. You take so long. A horse when it's born can run right away. People take so long to mature.
I still can't run.
And to be on their own. It's nice
Have you
that
seen me try?
You felt safe to share that here. And so you could think that, that whole thing is crazy, and what a dumb way, you don't know anything, you're so vulnerable, and then to learn and everything. To have Jesus do that, it's like, no, this is the path. This is it. Wow. This is the right way to do it, to go through teething, to go through, childhood, to go through teenage years, all that stuff, that is a sacred path, and that develops the mind.
Divine order's got to play out everywhere. I think we could talk about this one for the whole time. But see our shows. One was called Why Jesus Was Born. One was called The Spiritual Battles of Jesus Christ. Just Google, not Google, but search Jesus, off the left. We have a series of videos that will give you more and more context for what Jesus is according to Swedenborg, or check out the Book of the Lord, NCE book, right?
Yes, right.
So of Swedenborg. So
that was very impressive. You pulled that cross reference right out of there.
And look, did you notice the shirt I'm wearing today?
Oh, look at that.
The New Century
edition. That's so cool.
So product placement. Now, let's take a look at the next question. Thanks very much, John. So this is 2 questions, so they must be similar. If there's a balance that Earth reflects, is there a Mrs. God? Mm-hmm. Jen, we have it down in our thing to do a show about that. Teresa, are you confirming that God is in fact male by using he? So a couple people noticed that I used a male pronoun for God, and I actually try to stray away from pronouns for God to the point where sometimes I have this distinct feeling of being right here when we're doing a show and talking about God and saying God is doing this, and so that means God is like this, and like skipping the pronouns, because I do get this sense whenever I use a pronoun, like that's I feel like I'm claiming I know too much about the nature of God. And so, but that's just my personal feeling. Now, there's plenty of fascinating information from Swedenborg about God and gender. Enough that you and I and Karin and Chelsea, the writing team, and I think some others, have had a conversation about what would that show be? Is God male or female? Let's give a few things here. So,
Sure.
And I feel like we could start with, I'm using the pronoun he because that's the way it appears in Swedenborg's books. Why does it appear that way in Swedenborg's books?
Well, now you put me on the spot.
Because didn't you put those books out?
We did.
Okay.
We did.
Explain
It was
yourself.
some other guy, I think.
Was it?
I think that was us. Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason that we use the masculine pronoun, we really agonized about this. I'll try not to get too far into Latin and all this stuff, but it's interesting that in the Latin language you have three genders: masculine, feminine, and neuter.
Yeah.
Now those genders, there's a difference, a complex difference between grammatical gender and biological gender. So biological gender is like male, female, or just inanimate object or something like that. But grammatical gender, and those of you who are familiar with French or Russian or a lot of languages, still German, I believe, will have different genders, and the gender doesn't, like Mädchen in German is neuter,
Das.
but it means a young woman, right? So it's obviously biologically feminine, but grammatically
This is
neuter.
confusing thing that we're going to say. We're going to call these little words before it gender, but yet it's not related to biology. Why they do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's ancient wisdom that came down from long ago. It's interesting that all the abstract nouns, so many of the abstract nouns in Latin and Greek have a feminine ending because the feminine was like more expansive and more, so you had a quality like
the
beauty
essence,
or mercy or things like that would be a feminine. I think there's probably some ancient wisdom in there somewhere about it, but that's been lost through the corridors of time. So when Swedenborg uses adjectives as nouns, I know we're getting way into a grammar lesson here, but he uses adjectives to modify. Yeah, a lot of people are into that. Swedenborg uses adjectives.
We put that as the title of this episode, grammar. It was a fun experiment to see if anyone would.
Right. Does anybody want that? He uses adjectives substantively, which meaning like if you say the good, the bad, and the ugly, like that title of that movie, that means the good people, the bad people, the ugly people.
Yes.
There's an implied noun in there, but you've used this adjective that it's fine to just say the good. That works in English.
Yes.
Swedenborg uses those kind of adjectives a lot, and when he uses them of God, he doesn't go masculine and he doesn't go feminine.
Okay.
He goes neuter on those.
Das.
Neither.
Yeah.
Neuter, ne uter, is from a Latin word meaning neither. It's neither of the two. And so it's very interesting that although grammatically the word God, the word Lord, and a lot of other things are grammatically masculine, when he has a choice about it with the adjectives, he goes neuter on it.
Okay.
So why didn't we use neuter pronouns? Well, you could have said God and it, but it is really, that's a tough sell. That sounds inanimate. It sounds like a force or something.
Yeah.
And he's very against that kind of idea.
God is a person. God is a person.
And the identification with Jesus, who was biologically male or whatever, just pulled us into a masculine pronoun. And the other reason about it that I don't know if people think about is that English, if I say you, if I say, hey, it's you, would you know without seeing the person whether masculine or feminine?
No,
sometimes male or female.
When you see it.
No, you wouldn't. Yeah. How about if I said, they? No, you wouldn't know. If I said I, you don't know. You say you. The only time we care in English is when it's a third person singular, he, she, or it.
Yeah.
Then that's the only time we care.
Right.
We don't care if it's plural. We don't care if it's you or me or us or whatever. None of those are gendered. But we care when it's that third person. And so, unfortunately, Swedenborg is constantly writing in the third person.
Yes.
So you have to pick a gender. You can't get around it. So, so that's what we went with. But if we can get more, can you say something about like gender in God? How do you see gender in God?
Well, I was going to say another reason that probably he does use Christian male like Jesus Christ, also the Father. He talks about
Son,
the Father, Son.
Yes, right.
So that kind of pulls you in that direction. I know that there are things that seem to indicate the creatrix. He once refers to God as a female creative
force
in divine love and wisdom. So there seems to be some of both, but really we're asking this question backwards. Like, God is the first, and then male and female are derivatives. So how are you going to say it's backwards to say which one is God? So let's talk about what male and female are according to Swedenborg, and essentially it's different arrangements of love and wisdom. Right.
And in Genesis 1:27, I think it is about male and female. You know, he created humankind. He created male and female because they're in the image of God.
Yeah.
You know, it's right there that male and female are both the image of God. And the way Swedenborg describes the love and wisdom in God, that they, like, all that is feminine comes right from God. All that's masculine comes right from God. You know,
everything.
It's just like that was whole, a little bit like Plato's idea that it was together and then it gets separated or something. You know.
Yes.
So there's not a Mrs. God. There's like both of those things right in.
That's right.
In the one God.
That's right. And I have a couple of bullet points.
Good.
Good. You know, supposedly
break it down.
One angel is male and female.
That's true.
Because Swedenborg says he sees married couples in the afterlife who are actually one angel. So that this resemblance of God. But that he does, have. Let's see. Oh, so then he talks, but there's all this like Jesus imagery of being like a mother hen. So it's like sort of both there.
I wanted to take you under my wings, and you wouldn't. Yeah, that's right.
Then the divine or the grand human is supposed to, which is this reflection directly of God, is supposedly corresponds to the genitals, reproductive stuff of both genders.
Of both.
So that's somehow the director, but in a way that makes sense. But then sometimes Swedenborg talks about, God as the husband and the wife is the church, so the wife is all of us,
Male or female.
Yeah, exactly. Like I would be,
male or female.
I'm God's wife, if there's the part of me that is receptive to God, but is that just so what I'm trying to get at is that there seems to be things pointing in all directions, but in essence, love and wisdom, which everybody is just an arrangement of those are both in God.
Yes, they're both absolutely in God.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So it seems like so it's certainly not as simply like God is definitively male or definitively female, and it's probably we're asking the question backwards, and in the end, both are. God is but we are sort of a split off or something.
Right.
That.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. I mean,
just the way heat and light come as one energy from the sun.
That's right.
But we experience, didn't Johanna do something on the show recently about like infrared and like what you perceive with this part I feel with my skin, but this part I'm seeing with my eyes.
That was so cool.
But it's the same energy that's coming out. So that's kind of the way that I picture it. There's something unified in God.
Well, and I think and that he says that it's love and wisdom are sort of two things and sort of one thing.
Yeah.
That love is the underlying essence of something, and wisdom is the form that essence takes. I still don't really get it, But that's almost like there's not two, but there is two. So it's like, And
it is it's very clearly taught in the Bible and in Swedenborg's works that God is just past finding out. Our human minds, it's beyond, it transcends. My thoughts are higher than your thoughts, what God truly is in him, her, itself is beyond our comprehension. So we use these little pronouns and things like that, but don't take us too serious about them.
Right. So it, hopefully that's enough. Like if we're just scattering stuff, hopefully that's enough to hit somewhere. And
that was enough to offend everyone.
I think that one thing that there's sort of two, since we haven't spent enough time on this, there's sort of two emotional poles there. I mean, two emotional reasons why people would wonder about God, male and female. One is like, hey man, if so let's say I'm male and God is female, so am I like left out of the God thing? Am I like this sort of cast off thing?
Right.
So that's one side of it. And the negative side of that is like, well, I want God to be exactly like me and not like someone else. So then it's like my own. So there's that. But then there's also, I think, people have one gender that they relate to more and can more readily picture God as a, like, oh, that would be more intimate, that I could be more closely connected to a God of that gender, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, like, relating to that, I think everybody's going to be able to connect to God all the way. There's got to be a way that, that there's no, it's not like anybody who's like, oh, I just don't feel comfortable around men. God is a man. So there's no way that that's going to be how it is.
That's right. The main one of the main images that Swedenborg gives, in addition to all that stuff he says about human, is the sun, S-U-N. Like there's not a gender, right? I don't know. The sun
that's
is
right.
just a round ball of
light and heat.
Light and heat. Love and wisdom, and so that that's also an image that we're given,
right. And then for the other one, like, I want God to be in the same category as me. That's bad. You're not supposed, because the essence of God and the essence of love is to want it to be better for others than for yourself.
Yes.
So the essence of becoming like God is to not want to be in an exclusive club. Is to want to be out of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just feel like that's like part of like wondering, like, why has there been so much conversation around that, throughout the ages and everything.
Yeah. And Jesus, when he was alive in this world, was really in some ways, he picked 12 male disciples and so on, but a lot of his female followers were actually supplying the financial support for his ministry. They were very important. They didn't leave at the crucifixion. The guys left, most of them, and the women were still there. And he broke boundaries. Like, technically, I think he was not supposed to be talking to a woman at that well, by the law of that time, the social mores and everything. He's talking away to her, and having a whole exchange with her, and his disciples are sort of amazed, like, what are you doing? So he would push those things. I think he had a different standard in his mind.
Yep. And it's just all to the idea, like, you're supposed to love everyone.
That's right.
And
everybody is, that
you're not, the fundamental evil is to try to place yourself somehow above. You see some people as you, and you see other people as not you. Not you. And the you people you love, and the not you people you don't love.
Yeah.
We're kind of spinning off into another conversation, but it's important.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
And that's considered bad by Sweden.
That's considered bad. Right. Okay. All right, so there are two questions about that. Hopefully we got to something there. Let's take a look at the next one. Let's see what's our next journey. Hannah 24. Did Swedenborg study Kabbalah? I've heard that his teachings have a lot of similarities with it, minus reincarnation. Yeah, I've heard that the idea of the grand human is similar to Kabbalah. Do you have anything insightful, or do you know if he would have had access to things like that? How old is Kabbalah, etc.?
Yeah, it's certainly old enough. And I know, what is it, Adam Kadmon or something? There's this idea of this that seems to bear a resemblance to what he was teaching. His brother-in-law, Eric Benzelius, if I had this right.
That's his brother-in-law?
That was his brother-in-law, Eric Benzelius the Younger, taught at the University of Uppsala, Judaica, all this kind of thing.
Okay.
And Swedenborg was actually staying with his sister and brother-in-law.
Yeah.
For quite a period of time. He was a bachelor or whatever, so he was living with his sister and brother-in-law. So I tend to think that he was exposed to these things.
Yeah.
I know there's also been some study of Johannes Kemper, I think his name was, who was a converted Jew, I think, who was teaching Jewish studies. There was a lot of interest in Sweden at that time, and part of the whole Protestant Reformation was, let's get back to the original languages.
Yeah.
Let's really know the Hebrew and the Greek. Right. You go around to these Swedish churches, they all have the Tetragrammaton up on the ceiling and stuff, in Hebrew letters and all that. And so I think it's quite possible that he was exposed to some of those ideas. There was a lot of interest in mysticism and that kind of thing in Sweden at the time, but I don't know of a smoking gun passage, where he lays out that this is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
There's another possible explanation for the similarity, which is that they're both true, or something. You know what I mean? Like they're both coming from a similar heavenly source, or something like that. But I do think, I know there's some people who've done studies of this who felt that he was, he had been reading that, or at least the similarities are really striking.
Yep. Right. So right. Could either be that it's because you're both tapping into the same source, or he was influenced by it. The world may never know, unless you guys discover something in some manuscript somewhere. So
it might be in the back of one of those
fingers
books.
crossed.
That's right.
All right. Great
Thank
question.
you.
Let's look at another one. This is from Martin. When we pass, do we have guidance like we would in this world from our parents? Okay. Because we're talking about the order of things and how it goes. Even if you don't have parents, there's generally some kind of adult guidance in almost everyone's life. This is teaching you basics, caring for you before you can care for yourself. And if you're fortunate, it continues on into helping shape life and being there as a support system. But then you get into next life. You're not a child, right? Do you still have that? Do you still need it? Is there anything in Swedenborg that speaks to you there?
I tend to think from what he writes that you absolutely do. Like he tells a lot of stories about people. Some people may have some confusion when they go to the spiritual world. They're not sure, what should I do or something like that. Yeah. Then an angel will appear and help them and tell them, what to do and stuff like that. And I think there's actually a lot of that kind of thing. And I'm attached to the idea that I get from his works, maybe sometimes reading between the lines or whatever, that there's just like excellent mentoring. There's like really high quality mentoring, guidance. It's not, how to put this, like Swedenborg does say, like sometimes people come to Swedenborg, they see him in the spiritual world and they want, hey, solve my problem, like what, I need something. Yeah. And Swedenborg say, you've got to look to the Lord for that. Like that's, that's the source you got to go to, kind of thing. But even there, I think the Lord is, it says in Paul that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, that the Lord is more present and available. You know what I mean? And there are angels who can communicate with you and give you that kind of guidance, because everybody needs that. And I think the process that we go through after we die is a process of figuring out who we are, what's our unique usefulness that we have to offer and all that. Right. And you need a lot of guidance, what I mean? Some of it comes from within. It's not just sort of like a kind of a rigid thing where somebody's telling you, here are 13 things you need to do today. It's working through your freedom.
That would be nice, though.
I
would take that.
Would that kill somebody to say that?
I would love to just get a to-do list
that would
in
be
the morning.
Good. I know there's some place where these spirits went to angels and they said specifically, well, what should we do? We want to go to heaven. What should we do? And the angels kind of are a little unwilling to answer the question. They actually say, do whatever you want. Just know that people who do these kind of things go to heaven, and people who do these kind of things go to hell. Yeah. Right. But so they're not going to bind the freedom. Like they very, very huge respect for the freedom. So it's not like kind of a control thing where, they fit you in this specific mold. I'm with you. I would much rather have the control thing. Like the freedom thing is overrated. But
it sounds great when you actually have it.
But when you're actually in that situation, I like a little help here.
Just like help me plan my day.
Yeah, right. That'd be better. But that said, I think there's a lot of mentoring, guidance. And there's sometimes people go to the other world, they have this burning question, and then they have different kinds of people who come and answer it in different ways. You're not just abandoned or something. I think you have a lot, I think more than you do in this world.
And the way that he describes it, we already have this spiritual mentoring in a way, because we have these two angels with us.
That's true.
I could think of those like spiritual parents of a kind. Right. That they're not necessarily directly saying things to you, but they are guiding your life in these unseen kind of ways, influencing your priorities and goals to the extent that they can, without impinging on freedom.
Right. The difference there, I think, is that when angels are present with us, there's like a pretty strict rule book of what they're allowed. They're not allowed to teach us anything we didn't already know. Right. They have to work through our concepts and our thoughts or whatever, and they're, whatever. But in that world, I think they have the freedom to like, okay, let me show you around heaven. Let me talk about everything, and the restrictions are much less narrow.
Right, and he said people first coming into their communities, or first coming into the spiritual world, angels do. He says, render every service. Or I don't know how you guys translate that.
Right.
Renders every service you could want. And tell them all you want to know. It's only when you say, all right. Enough.
Okay, enough.
That you can receive. But then
that's
from
right.
There,
yeah, in fact, you can have sort of an overload of guidance. Yeah, that people are sort of, okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm done.
Right.
But this whole guidance thing in Earth, it's fitting into the context of these family groups, right? So there's sort of a family group in the spiritual world, which is your community. And he says that there are even like familial sort of relationships and things there, which are close. So I think you'd have guidance there as well. And it's you think about like sort of an idealized tribe or something. Like there are people who you go to for wisdom, there are people who you go to for emotional support, like that you're surrounded by this really, really good community. So you're giving certain people give you guidance, you give guidance to others.
That's
so there still is, you're still looked out for, just the way that
very much so.
Biology and the divine design have made it so that here we're mostly looked after.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Good answer.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Martin. Very good. Let's take a look at our next question. Rebel Goddess, how do those in the afterlife contact us? Like when we have a dream or vision, what allows that to happen? Like why isn't it always happening? And I think it's a question that I think a lot of people have, which is what's the mechanism and why is it limited and so on. So how does Swedenborg say anything about the mechanics of how it happens?
Wow. It is highly mysterious to me. I mean, some people just wonderful people never dream. They never remember a single dream that they've ever had. They don't. It's just like not part of their life. It seems like, I imagine they do have REM sleep or something, but it just doesn't enter their consciousness when they wake up for whatever reason. Other people from childhood are seeing spirits and, friends in the otherworldly beings, or they can see auras. They think everybody can see that. Is that so different or something? And it's a little baffling to me why some veils are so thin and some are so thick. I don't, because it even sometimes seems to run in families that you'll have certain families kind of have like the doors half open, and grandma was this way, and
didn't we just do a show sort of about this? That was it in 5 Kinds of Spiritual Experiences?
Maybe so. Right.
Yeah. So we just recently we did a show called 5 Kinds of Spiritual Experiences, and in there we run down not just these kinds, but also this sort of dynamic with the spiritual senses that Swedenborg talks about. So with the second part of the question, what allows them to happen, Swedenborg just generally would say your physical senses are made dormant, and your spiritual senses are open.
That's right. When it happens, those are the circumstances under which it happens.
That's like saying like how does the eye work? Well, it opens.
Yes.
Like there's
and then it sees the light.
Yeah. There's like much more going on, and Swedenborg says it's just as complex, if not more, than the physical world. So as far as the particulars of that, I don't. He goes into some detail, but nothing like we would have a knowledge of the physical eye now or something.
And as I've said before, I think I have the impression that people in the afterlife want to contact us a lot more than we get contacted. I think there's much more desire. Sometimes when people found out that Swedenborg was awake in both worlds and they realized, whoa, and they could even, if they looked with him, they could see their loved ones in this world in a kind of heartbreaking way. And they say, tell them, spirits through Swedenborg could see people in this world and say, tell them I'm okay. And Swedenborg said, I wasn't allowed to say, he's under the same rules as the guardian angels and stuff. And so I think that must be pretty heartbreaking. I know I've known a number of situations where one spouse dies and says, well, I'll send you a message, from the other side. But it's like, then you get over that, and then you see the rule book and the manual and stuff like that.
And not even like rule book, like if you'll get a mark on your permanent record if you do that, but it's just like the phone system is broken.
Yes, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, right.
That's
right.
The most popular video on our channel right now is one that you and I did years ago. It's called "Why Don't Our Loved Ones Communicate with Us More?" And it's trying to speak to this same question. And really, if I had to summarize it, it's more complicated than you think. I always use the same metaphor, but I'll do it here. For people to watch us at home right now, everything has to be just right with the technology. Right. And that's sometimes, right. If you guys have been tuning in live, you'll notice that there's major mess ups. Like we start just a couple shows ago, we started like 20 minutes late because something wasn't working. There's times when the internet skips and things cut out. If anything is off in that setup, you can't hear us. And we can't communicate to you.
And it's not a moral failing on your part.
It's not that we didn't want
mechanism.
to.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't want to.
Right.
It's that something, and the way Swedenborg describes it, because, and not just for something silly like the cable's not plugged in, but because of this huge fall into selfishness and materialism that the human race has undergone for thousands of years, that has destroyed the ability of the two worlds to connect it how it should be. And
right.
we're getting into this in our show we're about to do.
That's right.
Called "How to Talk to." Is it safe to talk to spirits?
Is it safe? That's right.
Then we'll get to that next week.
Right. I think so I'm not saying there is no contact. It's just when that happens, I think it's for a useful purpose. I think a little bit it's quite a different sort of situation, but like the Christmas story, the angels just appear. They don't hang out.
Yeah.
They don't, hey, you got to see it up in heaven. It's really great.
Yeah.
You know, they just like, boom, you know, Jesus is going to be born. It's really great. Peace on earth. See you, you know, and then they're off. You know?
Right.
And I know in people's individual lives, it's like that, where you'll just get somebody smiling and you see, oh, they're okay.
Right.
You know, or they'll just say, don't, you know, worry about this, or there's just like a 30-second message or something, you know, that's for a useful purpose. It's not just for chilling and, you know, passing time or something. It's got a useful purpose. It's boom, deliver the message out, you know, kind of thing. That's often the nature of it. Now, there's some people who feel like their loved one's with them all the time, or they feel them sitting in the bed, you know, that kind of thing, you know.
And it's probably
where there's a deep love and all that. So.
It happens. I think about, I was driving a couple days ago, you know, along the interstate, and you're going through these mountains, right? And sometimes you have cell service and sometimes you don't.
Sometimes you don't.
And it's because of how far you are from the cell towers, what mountains are in the way, you know, weather whatever affects
all kinds
it.
Of things, yeah.
That's, you know, it's that's what accounts for this disparity and who's being and those are silly physical reasons for something, but spiritually it's like there's this huge system of good and evil and things that have been destroyed and are trying to be put back, and all this work Jesus is doing, all these things that Swedenborg talks about. That is why there's so much signal disruption. And just because you happen to live where there's not cell service doesn't mean that it was a moral failing on your part or your loved ones don't want. It's just how things are, and we're all trying to fix it. You know, we're trying to fix the service.
And I really believe that part of the whole point of Swedenborg's message, you know, was that this prophecy that over time this is going to get better. We're going to get better at this.
Right.
The earth will get closer to heaven. It'll be easier to have that communication. We'll get back the way that most ancients were, where they were in touch with their loved ones who'd passed on, and it was clearer way, you know, and all that. And you sort of live in both worlds at once, kind of thing. I think that's where we're headed. But it's still, as we'll talk about next week, you know, there's some dangers, there's some issues and stuff like that. So so we're not quite there yet. But.
Great question. Thanks so much, Rebel Goddess. And we got 8 minutes, so let's see if it's one question or is it two questions.
Okay,
Depends on how long we ramble.
Yeah.
Next one.
We have no control over that.
No, I wish, but it's just the way the system is. Exit by flight. What is the dividing line upon entering the world of spirits that would make one move up or down from there to heaven or hell?
Ooh, I have an interesting answer to that.
The world of spirits that's capitalized there is, Swedenborg describes this place midway between heaven and hell that we all first enter on leaving the physical world. And so he's asking, Swedenborg saw many people going into heaven from there, maybe people going into hell from there. And how do you know, how do you know where you're headed? And how do people make that move? So what's your thoughts?
It took me a long time to grasp what Swedenborg was saying about this, because it's always been sort of scary, like, what if there's just no wrong step and, you tumble down into hell or something, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
But the way Swedenborg lays it out, and you can also see hints of this in the Bible here and there, and I know I'm the Bible guy, I'm sorry, I always bring it up.
That's good.
But that hell is a very deliberate choice. You really got put your heart into it, and what it requires is that you have to be so single-mindedly, wholeheartedly opposed to love, to truth, to God, to all those sorts of things, that you hate people who are in those things.
Yeah.
And it's not just enough to hate them. You have to actually attack them. Mm-hmm. When you hate that, when you've gotten so clear that, no, I am 100% against that. I hate that with everything in my being, and I'm going to do everything I can to destroy it. Your desires to attack them does not harm those people. They're protected.
Yeah.
But it clarifies where you stand, and that's the point at which. Now, if you got 99% of it, but you haven't got to the attack phase yet, you can hang out in there for quite a long. In the past, Swedenborg said that people would hang out there sometimes for a couple thousand years.
Yeah.
He says that doesn't happen the same way anymore because people get processed more easily now. But it's kind of comforting me to know that I don't want to do that. I don't. If you're this side of that, like, it's that extreme.
Yeah.
It's that extreme. And this is why in the book of Revelation and other places, it has to get to the point of attack. But you see, like the story of Armageddon and everything, it resolves in like one verse. Like the next verse, and they were cast out. And it didn't have any negative effect on anybody. And why does it have to get to that attack point? It's because that's clarity for those people. Like, no, I'm dead set against this. I hate this with all my being. And you're not playing a game or being the hypocrite or trying to look like you're nice, but you really hate it. You're full on. You're at the attack phase. You see that also in the Old Testament in Pharaoh when he goes after Moses. He lets the people go finally after the 10th plague, but then he can't help himself. He attacks. What happens? The people are safe, and his guy drown in the Red Sea. So that's a picture of what I'm talking about.
I think it's important to note that what moves people from location to location in the spiritual world is nothing other than the deepest conviction about what you love and what you want to do.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can get to the world of spirits and have a bad couple days and you somebody sees you at the wrong time and you're
wretched mistake.
That hell and heaven are both like, as you say, like a full consuming, like this is and I'm doing this in a state of clarity, like I know what I want to do.
I know what I'm doing.
And that's what really moves you. And it's not like you do your attack and then from there it's like, gotcha, now you're carted off into hell to be punished and punished. That's not what hell, according to Swedenborg, that's not even what hell is. See, we did an episode called The Good Thing About Hell, and you can see there that he uses these terms heaven and hell, and there are similarities to what we've heard about, but there's also these huge differences that mean the world. So you'll see there that hell is the place that if you have this love of hurting people and this hatred of mutual love, hatred of other people's happiness, hell is a mechanism that is built to give you the happiest possible life you can have while having chosen something so destructive to live by.
That's right. The Lord's mercy is still there. Yeah, it's still
and
there.
You can't harbor something that grotesque without it having all kinds of negative consequences, but hell is like keeping you from what would be. It goes back to our first question, does God see evil, just prevent, like he's preventing evil people from doing so much because that would bring punishment on them.
Right.
So it's only and he says the only punishments you ever go through in hell are just to keep you from harming yourself worse. It's just like here
and going too far. Is a too far. Right.
So it's it's only if this will even do good for you, because knowing I did that and got punished, maybe I shouldn't do that, will actually get you out of an even deeper rut that you could be in.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's that same principle of preventing evil applies to even the person who most deeply hates other people's happiness and wants to destroy it. Even then, right, the divine mercy is like, let's keep you from as much harm as we can. Let's give you as much happiness as we can, because that's what God is.
So when I think about it, that bar is set pretty low. Like if the bar is like, just hate God and anybody who has a whiff of God in them, that bar is pretty low. Anybody who gets over the bar,
right.
they're in good shape.
Well, and we're talking about those angels and how hyped up they are to talk to people. And Swedenborg says their greatest joy, the angels, is leading people into heaven. So you got to imagine that God's greatest joy, that's where angels get there.
Talk about mentoring.
So the thing that the divine desires more than anything is to bring people into heaven. So there's got to be every possible way to do it.
That's right.
There.
That's what I mean. You really got to throw yourself at it to not end up going on that path.
All right.
Yeah.
So it turned out it was one, because the questions are deep, the questions are good. So there's our, whether this little show here was a heaven for you guys or a hell at home. Like, I can imagine it being either. Like, they're still talking. We are glad you stayed with us to the end. And thank you so much for your questions. And we were just remarking as the show was coming up, as this countdown was happening, it's so amazing that we can do an online show about Swedenborg stuff, and you guys will tune in and ask. And
it's so awesome.
So we're very grateful to you, and hopefully we've given you a good hour, or if you're falling asleep to our program, that it was a gentle descent into sleep. So again, thanks so much. If you want to help us out in a little way, please like and subscribe to this channel. This helps the videos get out. It helps YouTube know that there's something of value here. And if you want to be part of the engine that makes this work, consider subscribing to us on Patreon. And we're a nonprofit, so we run off of donations. And Patreon is a way that you can sign up for just $1 a week to be a supporter of us and the content we put out. And we'll give you a thank you in the form of behind-the-scenes content, sort of the stuff that didn't quite make it, or expand on certain concepts, because there's always more. We're always like, oh, we should put that in, but then we can't get to it. So we'll give you the extra stuff just as a thank you for helping being a part. And thanks to everyone who has joined us there. It's awesome just feeling that support and knowing it makes enough of a difference for you to say, oh, I want to make this happen. As we alluded to earlier, next week we're going to talk about whether or not it's safe to talk to spirits. So we'll be here Monday night, same time, and I hope to see you then. Again, thanks for a great evening. Jonathan, thanks for hanging out.
Hey, thanks, Curtis.
And everybody, have a good night and have a good week.
Swedenborgian Life is Amy Aquarola, Morgan Beard, Curtis Childs, Karen Childs, Matthew Childs, Alexa Cole, John Connolly, Cara Dom, Chris Dunn, Stuart Farmer, Ben Keys, Reed McCardle, Chelsea Odner, Jonathan Rose, Shiloh Silverman, and Shada Sullivan.